But first, we're live here in Waterloo, Iowa, with the Republican nominee for President, John McCain. Senator, welcome back to Meet the Press. Been a while. I know you've been busy, but it's good to have you back here again.
Well, thank you. I noticed you mentioned 9 months. I think I still have been more appearances on Meet the Press than anybody else.
I think that's true, except maybe Bob Dole probably has got a few more than you, but he's got a few years on you.
Still time to catch up.
Listen, I don't have the most encouraging news for you today from the NBC News Mason-Dixon poll here in Iowa. It now shows that Obama has a lead of 11 points, 51 to 40 points percent. 4 years ago, as you know, George Bush won the state. It's been determined a battleground state, but the lead has been widening for Senator Obama right along the way. I know you're a film buff, so let me begin with a film metaphor. Do you feel more like Kevin Costner in The Field of Dreams or like George Clooney as the tiller of the ship in A Perfect Storm?
I think that I could draw my own, and I'd have to think of it. Maybe the Gipper. I feel like when I feel like Newt Rockney when at halftime when he said we'll go out there and get one for the Gipper. And look, those polls have consistently shown me much further behind than we actually are. It all depends on the voter turnout model, everybody gets bored, except for us junkies, about the process. We're doing fine. We are closed in the last week. If we continue this closure next week, you're going to be up very, very late on election night. We are very competitive in many of the battleground states, and I see these polls ranging from a 3-point gap today in Zogby to your 11.1, and they're all over the map. And obviously, I choose to trust my senses as well as polls, and the enthusiasm at almost all of our campaign events is at a higher level that I've ever seen. And I've been in a lot of presidential campaigns, usually as the warm-up act or one of those things, and I see intensity out there and I see passion. So we're very competitive here, and I'm very happy with where we are, and I'm very proud of the campaign I've run.
Senator, in the last of the presidential debates moderated by Bob Schieffer, you drew greater distinction between yourself and George Bush. You said, "I'm not George Bush." And then this past week in the Washington Times, a newspaper in Washington, this was the account. Senator John McCain blasted President Bush for building a mountain of debt for future generations, failing to pay for expanding Medicare, and abusing executive powers, leveling his strongest criticism to date of the administration, whose unpopularity may be dragging the Republican Party to the brink of a massive electoral defeat. "We just let things get completely out of hand," he said, of his own party's rule in the last 8 years. But then we have an account of you on Meet the Press going back to June 2005, and this is what you had to say about your relationship with President Bush at that time.
The fact is that I'm different, but the fact is that I have agreed with President Bush far more than I have disagreed. And on the transcendent issues, the most important issues of our day, I have been totally in agreement and support of President Bush. So I strongly disagree with any assertion that I've been more at odds with the President of the United States than I have been in agreement with.
Well, I'm very honored and humbled to have the opportunity to receive the endorsement of the President of the United States, a man who I have great admiration, respect, and affection. I intend to have as much possible campaigning events and together as is in keeping with the President's heavy schedule. And I look forward to that opportunity.
Senator McCain, both in tone and language, you are very close to President Bush in those appearances. The Congressional Quarterly did a review of your votes. 92% of the time you voted with President Bush. So it's a little hard for the public to separate you from this administration, isn't it?
Well, it may be the way you describe it. And by the way, the last interview that I did with the Washington Times, of course, I've been repeating for the last 8 years that the spending was out of control. That's why I voted against these pork barrel spending. I was the harshest critic of the failed strategy in Iraq and pointed it out in hearing after hearing and fought against it. I've supported action to address climate change since 2000 and said we've got to do something about it. There were sharp disagreements there. There were a number of disagreements. On general overall philosophy, I am a Republican. I respect the President of the United States. Of course we let spending get completely out of control, and I've been talking about it for a long, long period of time. Now, I know how it is on this show. You show various segments and comments that we make thousands of, and I understand that. But the fact is, I am not George Bush. The fact is that I was not popular within my own party. The fact is that when I said that we were failing in Iraq and we were going to lose, I was criticized by Republicans. The fact is, when I did campaign finance reform with Russ Feingold, I was opposed by my own party and my own president. So do we share a common philosophy of the Republican Party? Of course. But I've stood up against my party, not just President Bush, but others, and I've got the scars to prove it, including taking up with Ted Kennedy immigration reform, knowing full well that that was going to hurt my chances in the primary. So I could go down a long list of issues with you. Do I respect President Bush? Of course I respect him. But I pointed out we were on the wrong track in a whole lot of ways, including a $10 trillion deficit, including saying we got to rein in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and propose legislation to try to fix it before that triggered the housing collapse, including today when I'm saying they should be going out and buying up these mortgages and giving people mortgages that they can afford rather than bailing out the banks.
We're going to get to that very issue in a moment. One of the things that you've been saying in the course of your campaign is that Senator Obama has neither the experience nor the judgment to be the President of the United States. We've got some polls on how he's doing with the American voter on some of the critical issues of the day. This is the latest NBC News Wall Street Journal poll that was taken from October 17th to October 20th. On health care, who's better equipped to deal with that? Obama has a 39-point advantage over you in that poll. As you can see, the economy, it's up 21 points. The housing crisis, a 21-point advantage. Taxes, 14. In Iraq, you have an advantage over Senator Obama of about 5 points. These are not the pundits.
We finally found the pony.
These are not the pundits or the media elite. This is a broad-based poll across the country.
Yeah,
people making judgments about who's qualified.
I don't agree with their conclusion that I'm a quote 11 or 12 or 14 point, whatever it is. We have polls, including I think a Zogby poll, showing us 3 or 4 points behind. So if you want to continue to referring to a poll that I disagree with, I have to start out our conversation. I don't agree with that. We are closing, and we have been closing.
But it's not the only poll, Senator. A number of polls show that.
And it's not the only poll that shows us close. So, you know, I'm sure we don't want to spend the morning arguing about polls that are accurate or inaccurate, but I stand before the American people with my view that I think that we cannot find small business people and their small business people who have employees without health insurance, that he's going to fine them if they don't have the insurance policy that they want, that Senator Obama wants them to have, that if they have children that don't have health insurance that Senator Obama wants them to have, they will be fined, that he wants to spend an additional $1 trillion. I'll stand on those issues. I'll stand on them, and I'll take the verdict of the American people, and I guarantee you that 2 weeks from now, you will see this has been a very close race, and I believe that I'm going to win it.
Right. I don't want to dwell on these polls unduly, but even if you had a big, even if you had a big margin of error,
I can show you again a Zogby poll and our poll and other polls that will show different numbers than the one you're showing.
But those are the big universe polls.
You're starting out, in all due respect, with